Oh, what are you doing on that side? No, it's fine. It just threw me off for a second. 1, 2, half it. Friday. I mean Wednesday. I mean love. Hi. How's it going? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I was kidding. I'm sorry. Let's just get into picks of the week. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. All right, so coming up first, it's a pretty decent week down at the old shop. I managed to keep it at only 11 bucks, which is rare for me. But first up, we have Usagi Yojimbo, number 8 of the current series, published by San Diego's own IDW. I've been a huge fan of Stan Sakai's since I was a little boy, because he's been the colorist for Gru the Wanderer, pretty much the colorist for any project that Sergio Aragonés does, comic book project, not Mad Magazine, RIP project. But up until last year, maybe the year before or so, I hadn't read a whole ton. So I bought a bunch of the trades on Free Comic Book Day. God, was that last year? I think it was last year. And I have been devouring them ever since. And then he came out with a new series, and I was very pleased. If you're not familiar, Usagi Yojimbo, who just had his 25th anniversary this past November, is one of the original sort of funny animals that was all the rage back in the 80s. And it's, it's essentially a bunch of Kurosawa movies, but with animals. One of them's a cute bunny. It's really good stuff. And his cartooning is deceptively simple, as most really good cartoonists are. And yeah, he's a master. And that's all that I have prepared. Yep, according to my notes. After that, it doesn't really... Actually, I usually read these in alphabetical order, so Usagi Yojimbo will be the last one I read. Manifest Destiny number 41 is also what I bought this week. Manifest Destiny is a book published by Image Comics. It's one of the best books they've published, I think, ever. I would go that far as to say ever. Sorry, I'm getting a little organized. It is done by Chris Dingus and Matthew Roberts, whose work I was not familiar with at all before they started this book. I'm not even sure that they didn't. This might be their first book, for all I know. Manifest Destiny is a story of Lewis and Clark, but there's a lot more supernatural stuff going on out there. So it's like the X-Files meets Lewis and Clark, basically. And it's super duper good. I don't have much else to say. Oh, this arc so far has been great, because they went on it, like, it had like an extended delay in that book. It might have even been at least a year. I thought it was over. I didn't realize they were just taking an extended break, which is not uncommon, especially with your indie books. They'll do an arc and then take a few months off and then do another arc. Sure, monthly comics aren't what they were when I was a kid, and I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. It's just a true thing. So, monthly is not really the schedule. Brian Hitch got all bent out of shape back in like 2007 because everyone was screaming at him because his issues of Civil War, which was the big Marvel crossover of that year, were late, and it screwed up the whole thing because there was all these tie-ins and everything else, so those all had to get pushed back. And Brian Hitch is a brilliant artist, don't get me wrong. And I'm actually kind of quoting secondhand, but he was like kind of pissed off about it. Well, monthly books are a thing of the past, and he's not wrong. But dude, you're drawing a monthly book, draw a monthly book. That's just some criticism I have for Brian Hitch from 13 years ago. Thought I'd share that with everyone here today. And then I also got this week The Man Who Fucked Up Time number 1 on the Aftershock Publishing House. I want to say label, but it's not a record. I'm used to talking about records in my closet. Listen to my podcast every Thursday, The Worm Turns with Jimmy Calloway, available wherever you get podcasts, unless you get them on Spotify. All right, end of commercial. We're back. The Man Who Fucked Up Time is written by Jonathan Lehman, who is most well known in comic book circles for his book Chew, which he did with Rob. And that book ended, 10 years ago? No, not quite that long ago. It's been over for a little while, and Lehman and Guillory have been each doing their own projects since. I'd love to see them get back together. Oh, well, in fact, they're doing a Chew crossover with Outer Darkness, but I don't read Outer Darkness, so I don't know if I'm going to bother with that. Jonathan Lehman is a very good writer, is my point. And then the artist on this book is a fellow by the name of Carl Mostert, who I'm not familiar with at all. I looked him up. He's apparently a South African fellow, and he did a couple books in South Africa called The Little Five, and then I believe another one called Sector. I think that's a South African production. He's drew at least one issue of Red Hood and the Outlaws for DC, so suffice it to say, I'm not familiar with his artwork so far. But Aftershock is a really good indie in that they're very much into pushing boundaries and stuff. It's a very punk rock comic book publisher, not unlike what Avatar kind of was at the beginning. I don't even know if Avatar's still active, but it's these littler publishing houses, and they may not have the reach that the big two have, or even that Dark Horse or Image has, but they're fully creator supportive. The creators own everything, which is also the same in Image. But that's what now they're starting to get marquee talent like Jonathan Lehman. Garth Ennis has written for them. Brian Azzarello has written for them. There's a lot so that's like a very big appeal. It's like Avatar was kind of a garbage label, kind of a garbage publisher, but then they started roping in Ennis and Alan Moore and stuff, and quality rose. Imagine that. So that will be fun. I'm assuming it's some sort of time travel story, and I'm also assuming there will be a few blue words. So send the kids out of the room. Or kids, send your parents out of the room. All right, that was Picks of the Week. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. And now, what's next? Oh, what's next? Picks of last week. Woo! Okay. So last week I read the newest premiere issue of Quantum and Woody from Valiant Comics. If you had told me even 10 years ago that I'd be reading any Valiant comics, I would have said, you're out of your mind. In the 90s when Valiant started and it was really hot right away, like they really hit the ground running, I didn't like it because it was just really warmed over Image stuff, which at the time was just warmed over Marvel stuff, which at the time Marvel was warmed over Marvel stuff. I was losing all interest in superheroes at this time. I was also a teenager. But no, Valiant's really made a comeback over the last few years. When I worked at San Diego Comics, don't shop there, we literally could not give them away. We used to have a box of them, trying to like force them on unsuspecting people that didn't know any better. And even the non-discerning consumer took a look at that old Valiant stuff and was like, I'm good. Why am I taking so much time to talk about a publisher that hasn't existed as it has been for 25 years? I don't know. 30. Jeez Louise. Quantum and Woody was good. And if you've not read any of the previous series, you don't need to. You can jump in here. Anything that you don't get will be explained. It's a very simple premise, which I explained last week. And Ryan Brown is out of his mind in this book. He's the artist. He was the artist for Curse Words, which was one of my favorite titles. I think I might have mentioned that last week. I don't know if I've discussed Curse Words on this program, if that's what you can call it. And he also drew a book called Astronauts in Trouble. No, God Hates Astronauts. Astronauts in Trouble is an AIR. I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, sorry. You know, this morning I said to myself, I've been in such a bad mood lately. Why don't I try being goofier? And unfortunately, I've taken my own advice. All right. Also, last week I read Redneck number 25, the big silver issue. 25 years. They put one out every year. No, this was a great issue. Like I was saying last week, I don't really remember where we left off at the end of the last arc, and this issue did not really jog my memory, because this issue was something of a special, you know, and it's not most comics when they get to number 25, they do kind of a longer. I think this is a little bit longer than usual. This issue, though, was a silent issue, which you don't see a ton of those anymore. No dialogue at all. And it takes place in the year 33 AD, so take from that what you will. Very good stuff, though. These guys continue to kill it up and down. And then finally, I also read Weapon Plus World War IV. Now this, I feel like, is probably going to remain a one-shot. It's like, I don't know what it is about the Weapon X program and its subsidiaries that Marvel keeps coming back to. I'm on board, but, I mean, I've been on board since 1988, so it doesn't really count. This felt like a tryout issue, but Benjamin Percy, who wrote it, is already got... I mean, he's only been writing comics for 4 years, something like that, but he's got he's a published novelist, and he wrote Green Arrow for a long time. So I don't know why they need to give him especially because they already handed him some of the X books, which you're not going to do that to somebody you haven't vetted thoroughly. Georges Gentil. I'm pronouncing it French because that's how it's spelled, but he's from Miami, so I don't know how he pronounces it. The artist on that is also, like, he hasn't done a whole lot for Marvel, but, you know, I don't know that they would need to give, I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to cash in on schnooks like me, especially putting Brute Force in it because, and this is something Marvel's been doing for a few years now, bringing back stuff from the 80s and 90s, because they know that I and everyone my age is now getting hit with waves of nostalgia. And we're going to buy 2099 stuff and Atlantis Attacks and all this other stuff that came out when we were kids. I don't apologize for it. I love it. I'm all fine with rehashing things. But Brute Force showed up in the last Weapon X one-shot, which was also called Weapon Plus, but it was Captain America and Wolverine. And again, it was good, but I remember reading it going, I didn't need to buy this. I could have read it on the app in 6 months, but all right. That was Picks of last week. Where did I put the thing? Picks of last week. And then also last week I mentioned this little number. I think it was last week. It might have been the week before. This is a Ralph Snart Adventures trade paperback entitled Let's Get Naked. And it came out in 2003. And there's no delicate way to say this. It's a travesty. The comic is great. The comic will never not be great. And as I read this, I finished reading it yesterday. I was reading it going, oh, I have every one of these. Because I don't know. I think I'm missing a few Ralph Snarts, but I think I pretty much have the whole run at this point. I'm fine with buying a book that I already have because I don't have to dig for them. Because they're not only are they buried in my collection, but most of my collection is in my mother's garage, which is a 2-hour drive from here. So this... it's so poorly put together. I don't know if you can tell. This is like quite clearly photocopied. Now, it is true that Now Comics, the publisher out of Chicago, suffered a fire. I don't know when, but sometime in the past. So a lot of original artwork and stuff like that was lost. Fair enough. But there are entire chunks just missing. It'll skip from page 16 to page 18, and there won't be any 17 at all. Or sometimes they'll reprint. They'll put page 16 in there twice before it goes to 18. And at one point towards the end, it was missing a full 5 pages out of an issue. It's $25. And the fact that it's out of print is probably good. But I think that's the thing, too, because... And I don't want to cast aspersions. I mean, I'm sure this gets in... I don't want this to get back to anyone. But, yeah, apparently their business practices were not all above board. And I think this book is proof of that. It's really a shame, because I really did enjoy revisiting this comic. It's super funny on its own. And it was also the nostalgia thing I was talking about before, because this is one of the first books I ever got into. So... that's a bummer. You should go to ralphsnart.com and just buy all this stuff directly from Mark Hansen, which I've also done. That's how you do things. All right. Well, everybody, that's been it for this week. And, okay, bye. 2, 3, 4. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-beep-boo. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.